Well, welcome back to the Discovery Doc podcast. I'm here with
your host, Dr. Cece, functional medicine nurse practitioner, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and crunchy mama of not just 3, but 4. So we've been hiding a secret, but on all episodes you've watched thus far, I sure as heck have been Fuego. So yeah, when I can't catch my breath and
it's an adorable baby bump.
that's because the baby is making me out of breath.
I'm excited.
And it's a young boy.
Oh, we are telling people.
We are telling people it's a boy.
2 of each.
2 of each, yes. We've been trying to hide him, but he is fully out to play now. So
he's adorable, and we're going to get to know him along with getting to know you. And
yes.
I'm your other host, Anna Kate.
Oh God, I forgot. Sorry.
It's okay. We were excited about it. I'm Anna Kate, your medical mystery overachiever and discovery liaison. And
I'm so glad she can focus.
Pregnancy brain with Swiss cheese pregnancy brain. Who knows what's going to happen? Stay tuned. It's going to be a wild ride.
Anyways, on our last episode, we started to dive into female hormones and female health and periods and cycles, learning the term cycle and birth control and all that good stuff. This entire month, we are focusing solely on female health and hormones. We have some awesome experts coming on to our podcast in the upcoming episodes. But as kind of continue our conversation from last episode, I want to dive a little bit deeper into what I'm seeing changing hormones or contributing to changes of hormones. And clinically, it's very evident because what I am seeing is that girls are getting their first period much earlier than we've seen traditionally. And men or boys, teenagers, what I'm seeing is their testosterone is very low and their body shapes are changing, which I'm finding that boys, teenage boys, are much leaner. Their hips are a little bit wider. And that should, there should be like big red flags there. There should be big red flags as to why men's testosterone has decreased, 50-fold over the last 20, 30 years. Why fertility has become such a massive problem for most, not just a little bit of couples, but most couples out there struggle from some sort of infertility. And I just feel like we are being like, I wonder why that's happening. Instead of investigating very easy things that we can make changes of in daily life that are known to cause disruption to our reproductive hormone. And so that, it should be a concern for everybody, because how does a human population survive if it can't reproduce? It doesn't. Or we start becoming dependent on crazy technology, where I just read a study yesterday where, so I'm not going to quote where it's from, I forgot where the country is, but where they've basically taken synthetic stem cells and created an embryo.
Yeah, no, God didn't do that.
No. So what obviously egg and sperm meet, fertilize, create an embryo, and that's the beginning of life. For science purposes, they can't take viable embryos and mess with them. Obviously, that's immoral. So they've now created it from synthetic stem cells. What is that thing going to turn into? Someone tell me.
Not a baby.
Not a human. Right. Anyways, so it's a messy situation, especially if you are a God-fearing human, that people are tampering with this. But it all stems back to our hormones. And I think that they are trying to do that because they see that reproduction is going down so much. Fertility.
You know the story about how all the scientists got together and they were going to make like a new world, and they were going to make human, and they were going to do all of this stuff, and they were trying to do it all, and they went and they asked God, like, hey, we were told them we can do it better than you. And then they scooped up a handful of dirt, and God goes, it's your own dirt. I made that. That's mine. It's your own dirt. That's all I'm going to think about that.
So yeah, that's just a little sidetracked, but I am seeing that where decreased testosterone in men with teenage boys who are thinner, wider hips, and then girls who are getting their periods way earlier. And then women, just so many women with abnormal periods. And this was way prior to COVID. COVID has definitely amplified it, where I'm seeing an increase in reproductive issues post-COVID, as well as shorter menstrual cycles, irregular, heavier periods, more clotting, things like that. But it definitely wasn't new. That's been going on for years and years and years and years. And there's so many aspects of it. So I don't want to minimize all the things that can impact your hormones, because there are so darn many. But we are simply going to start talking about endocrine disruptors and how we can make changes in daily life to reduce that exposure.
So what's an endocrine? My joke. Endocrine, why is it so disruptive?
Yes. So endocrine disrupting chemicals are chemicals that mimic or block our ability or interfere with our ability to produce our own hormones, which are part of the endocrine system.
Right.
Those hormones are needed to maintain things like our cycle and our period, and produce progesterone and testosterone and all these other hormones that are essential for our health. Yeah, endocrine glands are all over the body. So a lot of people think that there's just like one or two, but they're all over the body, and they produce hormones that act as like these signaling molecules after they're released into the circulatory system. Little messengers, essentially, are what they are. And our hormones are dependent on this messaging system because it controls a ton of our biological processes like growth, fertility, development, reproduction. Arguably somewhat important, right? Somewhat important. So what happens in our body is these hormones, they act in very, very small amounts. So we don't get these like massive, wild influxes of hormones, but little tiny adjustments is what they respond to. Okay. And so when we have minor disruptions in those levels, it can cause major impact to us developmentally and biologically.
And these can start in utero?
100%. They can start in utero. I mean,
what I'm asking is there's no escape, that we are just bombarded and exposed to endocrine disruptors.
Because some of these are found at a 90% increase in breast milk. We can pass these to our newborns. Forever chemicals or PFAs have been found in breast milk, which means our bodies are accumulating them and then secreting them.
Because we're holding on to them for years and years and years. We don't process it.
Because we can't get rid of them. That's why they're called forever chemicals. So the biggest take home there is a small minor disruption can create a massive havoc on your system. So I get the question a lot of, well, if I make this one change, then what good does it do? It does a lot of good, because that's one change better than you were before. And that's one little kind of trigger that you took out. And those triggers accumulate and can cause a lot of problems. So these endocrine disruptors are found in things that we use every single day. They're chemicals that are found in foods, in toys, in pesticides, in personal care products, in our deodorant, in our shampoo. I mean, so many different things. And that's not a scare tactic. It's not a fear. Don't be fearful of that, but be empowered with that knowledge so that we can make decisions on what we are using. You have the power to choose what product you're bringing into your home.
No better, do better.
Right. So contact with those, I mean, we can't control certain things, because contact with some of these disruptors can be in the air. You can't control that. You're walking down the street. You can't control that. So release that stress of certain things floating around in the air.
You can choose what you brush your teeth with, wash your hair with.
And the food that you eat, right, or the water that you consume. You can absolutely choose some of those things. So, and some of those can't be completely avoided or taken out, but you can make informed decisions to reduce that exposure and to minimize the risk of it impacting your hormone.
We can do that.
We can do that.
We can do that.
So I think and we've touched a little bit, like if you go back to our air and water episodes, that is just great general information on how to start removing some of those things. So we're not going to dive too much into that now. But I think it's important to know some of the top and the most well-studied endocrine disruptors and what they do.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn. Are you going to learn?
So here we go. I have a list.
Oh,
you know when Cece makes a list.
We're all in for a good time.
We are.
Here, hold my milk.
But it's not milk because I don't drink milk.
Well. Here, hold my tequila. That's a different list.
Not now. I can't drink tequila right now, fortunately, and I want it so bad. I'm not gonna lie. Every time Will gets a margarita, I'm like, can I just sniff it?
You can actually put tequila on your hands and use it as a disinfectant.
Great.
To sanitize your hands, and then you can
I'm just gonna do that a few times per week.
Yeah, I don't think
no one will judge me.
No, she's walking around smelling like tequila. She just uses it as hand sanitizer.
Walks in the office. Why does it smell like tequila? Cece rubs it on her hands because she's pregnant, can't drink it. Okay. Anyways, back to the show.
We're killing germs and we're still having a good time.
We are. One of the most, I don't want to say common, but one of the most studied endocrine disruptors is something called atrazine.
Okay.
Atrazine is commonly applied as an herbicide all over the world. There is a guy who I'm not going to say his name because everyone thinks he's crazy, but years and years and years ago, a study came out. I believe it was about like the 1980s. And this one guy made it well known in the early 2000s. But early 80s, there was a scientist who came out with a study that projected what men specifically, how men's bodies would physically change with exposure to atrazine. This came about after he studied atrazine exposure in tadpoles. And so there was a pond or whatever lake, and those tadpoles were being, what's the word? Exposed.
Yes.
It's pregnancy brain. Yes, I haven't been able to say it because no one's known, but my brain just goes blank, and I'm like, what's that word?
And my Swiss cheese brain can't.
And she doesn't help. You heard that pause? I was waiting for her to jump in.
Okay. But yes, the tadpoles in this
were exposed to atrazine a normal amount just from pesticide exposure around the pond. And what this chemist, or he was a marine biologist, what he was studying was the changes on the tadpoles. And those baby tadpoles were being born either with two genitalia, both male and female, or they were genetically tested, their chromosomes were showing that they were male, but being born with female genitalia for tadpole. Just with exposure to atrazine. Y'all think about that and think about what we were just talking about with fertility rates, with bodies changing. And so the scientist, he made a projection of, okay, if this is happening to tadpoles, for humans, this is what I expect the average male to look like 100 years from now. And bro, nailed it. The first picture is like your burly, husky chest hair, muscular man. Yeah, like a mountain man, right? And then fast forward, the last picture of it, and I can't remember, I think it was maybe like 2030 that was projected to be, was a very thin, frail looking, wider hips, higher cheekbone man. No hair. Yeah. So anyways, that's an interesting study to look at. And brings us back to point A, is that's just one. That's one herbicide that we are exposed to. Not to mention that, I guess the next most common would be BPA. We all know what BPA is with our water bottles and things like that. It's used to make plastics and manufacturing, food packages, etc. Dioxins are another one that are byproducts of certain manufacturing processes, especially for herbicides. Perchlorate is another guy that we're exposed to quite a bit. It's something that we mentioned earlier, our PFA, our forever chemicals, which mainstream media has kind of picked up on and is now putting out in the world, more so than it ever has, with PFAs being in our water supplies and in breast milk and in cookware. I even saw that in a general mainstream article the other day, and I was like, about time.
Mom's drinking the water that's got PFAs in it, and she's feeding her baby. That makes sense. It's not breast milk. Just
Right.
It's because mom's getting it.
Ingested. Yeah. Exactly. And basically they're finding that they're indestructible. You can't get rid of them. You can't take them out of anything. Phthalates are another big one that we see a lot in personal care products, cosmetics, things like that, and triclosan as well. It's the list goes on and on and on. It's just a matter of small little things in everyday life that contain these chemicals. It bioaccumulates. And if we go back to what we were saying earlier, where minor adjustments cause major havoc, then your minor shampoo can cause major product, right? That's what it's about. It's making those better decisions to remove that toxic burden or that toxin load in something that you can control. What you can control, what's in your home. That's my biggest thing. Everything else I try not to stress about and go down rabbit holes.
We talked about this before, is that you can't live in the bubble of I'm not going to be exposed to anything ever. And
right. Yeah, that's just not real life.
Right. So go enjoy life, but make the best decisions when you make it. And there sometimes you will have options to be free, really crappy things, but there is a lesser evil of one of them.
Yes.
Pick that one.
And that's why I always say a better option. So like there's when I do some of these posts that are like, oh, non-toxic or better options at Kroger, whatever it is. And someone will be like, wait, but I thought this one is not as good as this. And I'm like, yes, but the one that you're saying is not available at that store. Right. So even amongst wherever you shop, wherever you go, like Anna Kate just said, there's always a better option within that store that you can choose.
Turn and learn. You don't have to go to 6,000 different grocery stores
No.
to get all this stuff. I feel like I do that. And that
unless you're psycho like me.
Yeah. And me. I go to like 4 different grocery stores. You know, just well, I mean, it is the thing of you like what you like, but it's also what's good for you and what's good for your family.
And what's available, what's
Right.
convenient, there's price differences in a lot of these things. So it's just about making the best decision that you can make to what's available to you.
I left the other day and went to that grocery store across the street, and I got like halfway through looking for my normal stuff. It's not the store I normally shop at, and I almost abandoned my buggy, but I bought something and then left, and I went to my regular.
Because it was just too much. It was overwhelming.
Well, I couldn't find what I wanted. They didn't have like snacks that we had today. They didn't have that, so I had to go to Publix anyway. Yeah, I like Publix, but there's other ones that like Sprouts. There's something that I'll go to Whole Foods for occasionally. That's not where I want to go and do all my major shopping.
Yeah. You can also cherry pick like she is.
But now, a word from our sponsor.
With a looming fluvid season upon us, prevention is key. Supporting your immune and gut health every day is crucial. That's why I trust Stellar Biotics for daily immune and gut health support. With 20 years of science behind their metabiotic and probiotics, Stellar Biotics produces all-natural supplements that are proven safe and effective for everyone in your family, children, nursing mothers, and even pets. I trust them for my family's immune and gut health support, and I hope you consider them for yours. Learn more at stellarbiotics.com and use coupon code DrCC10 to get 10% off your purchase today. But the kind of backing up then and bringing it back to hormones is those conversations about removing some of those things that we can remove. We've discussed in other episodes. Y'all can go back and listen. But when it comes to hormones and thinking about how, okay, these products, these endocrine disruptors can absolutely cause disruption with my fertility, with my cycle, what we can do about that. Because some of that is not just removing products from your home and then your hormones magically correct themselves, right? We need help. We need someone good to help us. I'm trying to help this trick, y'all. But I would suggest find a functional medicine provider. That functional medicine provider will run way more comprehensive labs than a traditional GYN or OB will, because we're looking at these hormones in multiple ways. every different every route tells us something different. So our blood tells us one thing, our saliva tells us one thing, our urine, our poop tells us one thing. It's not all equal. So when we go to like an OBGYN and they're doing, maybe an estrogen and progesterone on blood work one time, that's great, but that is a snippet of your hormone, right? That is, we discussed this in our previous episode also. Our hormones change over the entire month. So your estradiol, your estrogen, your progesterone could look perfect on the day that you drew it. And then, hey, you look great, nothing's wrong. But what about the other 27 days in your cycle? What are they doing then? So when someone has a hormonal imbalance, that is pretty obvious. So if a patient comes to me and they have these symptoms that say, wow, your hormones are out of whack, we got to look at them. Yes, I run them on blood work, but I do a 30-day panel to look at the entire month because your hormones are meant and designed to shift in that entire month. So I want to see that on paper. I want to see it plotted out for me from day 1 to day whatever your cycle ends, 27, 28, 29, and see your LH, your estradiol, your progesterone, where it's spiking, where it's peaking. Is it not peaking? Where's our problem? Yeah. So I find that I don't know. There's one conventional OBGYN locally, just a GYN, sorry, that I know will run a panel like that. Nobody else. So maybe near you there is, but it tends to be more functional medicine minded people who will dive into more of those specialty labs that will show your hormones at a way more in-depth look than just a blimp in time on a blood panel. That makes sense?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the more you know.
It's my good. I'm not going to sing it again. I'm not going to do it. Anyways, the other things that are important with seeing a functional medicine doctor, if you have any sort of hormonal imbalance, is your gut. Your gut is so important.
It is.
Your gut health.
Your second brain.
It is your second brain. It's linked to your first brain. That's how important it is. But if you want to get rid of any opportunistic organisms and you want to diversify the gut microbiome, your gut is where we absorb all of our nutrients that you need to produce in order to produce hormones. So you got to absorb all those good nutrients that you're either, eating or consuming or taking in supplement form to then help build those hormones. So gut health is wildly important when it has to do with hormones. If you're not breaking down and absorbing the nutrients that you're eating properly, then you won't have the building blocks that you need for those hormones. And for your thyroid too, not just sex hormones, not just testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen, but also your thyroid.
Yeah.
That's important as well.
Yeah. Right. How? Yeah.
Cortisol too. People forget that cortisol is a hormone, but that's in there too. Cortisol, it is your stress hormone and it's produced by our adrenal gland. And it also produces DHEA, which is a parent to testosterone. Yeah. So they're all intercorrelated, where if we're not taking care of our adrenal glands, then we're not producing enough DHEA, which means our testosterone is probably low, which usually means our cortisol is way jacked up.
Bad mood.
Yeah. And so we forget that, hey, that part of the hormonal feedback loop can impact our cycles too. Whereas traditional OGYNs just kind of focus on the progesterone estrogen aspect for sure.
So as a functional medicine practitioner, she looks at the whole picture. So it's not just things, which is where my brain was trying to go. How do you sort through all of that? But you're the detective that you look through all the things puzzle together, figure out, is it hormones? Is it like
right, is it someone else? Yeah. That I have to, I tell patients this all the time. If someone comes to me with generic symptoms, those are the hardest, like chronic fatigue or general pain, right? Those two are very vague, where oftentimes I have to look at a whole gambit of testing. I have to look at your body comprehensively on paper, which will include some hormonal things. I have to look at your GI health. I have to look at certain viruses or bacteria. And then I'll see flags amongst those to see if I need to go down kind of deeper rabbit holes with something more specific. It's always in the history. If we are talking for an hour and I'm hearing little tidbits of your history, that prompts my brain to know, ooh, girl, we got to look at your cortisol. Not your cortisol as a blimp in time on paper, but a saliva test where I'm looking at your cortisol over 24 hours because that hormone also changes depending on the time of the day. Or we have to do something more like a 30-day female hormone cycling panel. I don't do that for every woman who walks through my door. It's not needed, but I will always hear it in the history if it's something that I need at that moment. Something else that a good functional medicine practitioner will do, she does distract me, is resetting your feedback loop. So we've talked a lot about how especially some of those endocrine disruptors can inhibit your feedback loop, but what about resetting it? And that's what a good doctor will do. Will help you reset it with natural supplements, or sometimes depending on the age and where the woman is at in her life, on bioidentical hormones or natural supplements. It's very, very unique to the individual, extremely unique. There's no like one protocol that fits all, but certain things that I use quite a bit are Inositol, chasteberry, DIM are awesome at helping to, DIM especially helps our body to get rid of excess estrogen that's built up over time from some of those endocrine disruptors. And those endocrine disruptors then mimic our estrogen, so our estrogen levels spike up. So I'll see that a lot in patients with PCOS or cysts or fibroids.
Your body's making extra things, the estrogen that
doesn't need, so it's got to go somewhere.
Right.
So it builds up excess things. Calcium D-glucarate is also a good one, and resveratrol are awesome at helping to eliminate some of those synthetic estrogens. Actually, yes. Well, not me, but yes.
Not this. But yeah, there are lots of supplements that have resveratrol in them, and so it does come from wine. You cannot drink. Okay, you can't drink enough wine to get too much resveratrol.
Or could you?
Yeah, in a vitamin.
I have a friend. I will not name my friend. She's one of my best friends, and I promise you, she's getting enough from her wine.
Is she? Good to know.
We don't name names here. No judgment, absolutely. The other thing simply is nourishing your body with nutrient dense foods to help stabilize things like insulin, reducing this. I mean, this one is like, hey, everybody go reduce your stress. And people are like, how? Like I work, I have families,
dogs,
right.
Life.
Stress, just that one's a hard one, but it is so true. And I'm very realistic. Like I know my patients cannot go sit and meditate for 4 hours in a day and just like, yes, take a nap and just relax. Like it's not real life for a lot of people. But there are little things that you can implement throughout your day to help keep your cortisol levels down. So we're not inhibiting those feedback loops of our sex hormones that then play a part in our cycles. Go ground yourself for 5 minutes outside. You know, Anna Kate does that when we leave recording. She's like, I'm just going to stand in your yard and with my feet just barefoot and just ground for 5 minutes. That's it. And so find those little breaks in your day to center yourself, to ground yourself, to just get outside and be in the sunshine for
screen down
3 minutes. Yes, that's all I'm asking for. You can have a little reminder on your Apple Watch or your phone or whatever. That's breathing technique for 90 seconds.
Yep, and Dr. Diamco showed us something. You can watch that the end of that episode to be able to breath break. Yeah, there are so many different things. You can take a little prayer break, a little meditation break. And by little, I mean a minute or two. You know, it doesn't have to be this long, drastic thing. But when our cortisol stays so high and we're constantly in that state of fight or flight, it directly depletes our progesterone. It also inhibits how we produce our testosterone. So, I mean, and it's not just for female hormones, but for life in general. We can't sustain staying in that high fight or flight state. So implement small things in your day that's sustainable, that's just built into your routine for 1, 2, 3 minutes at a time. Do that. You can totally do that. When it comes to removing some of those endocrine disruptors, we're not going to rehash that again. We talked about some of the big ones in previous episodes. So go look at that. We have some awesome swaps on my Instagram that are just products, random products at a time, where I'll always show you, hey, these aren't so great, but these are awesome choices. So just start slowly implementing those. You had an awesome question earlier on our previous episode. Do you remember what it was? Oh yeah. What happens when you're in your cycle and you're on your period and your menses, what's your preferred?
Yes. So this is a big one that I want to talk about because it is absolutely ridiculous that women are using toxic products on female parts.
Okay, so to start this off, it is a self-cleaning.
Yes.
You do not need to put
Thank you.
anything up there. If you do, it messes with the pH, and you get other infections and all kinds of
Yes.
stuff. Got her going. Got it.
She is happy. She has cleaning ladies in there, you know, doing their thing, and you don't need to interfere with that. You're just going to mess up their work.
Yeah, let her do
She's
She's been doing this for millennia. You're fine.
Right. She is fine. Women, fun fact, use over 10,000 tampons in their lifetime. 10,000 tampons. So do you think that what's in your tampon should matter?
Yes.
Not a trick question. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking because there's new other things on the market that are not
tampons, right?
But there are other things. So, well, do you want to know? I can tell.
What is she talking about?
Okay, so I have dexterity mobility issues with my hands, so sometimes a traditional tampon was not gonna. That was close enough. Then I put to a cup.
Yeah,
and cups are great. I cannot do on bad days when my hands are. I'm like, creating a mess, and I can't get the thing. Yeah. So
I just envision that. Oh, that's sad.
Well, I mean, my hand
blood everywhere.
Yeah. So, and if you're not at home or not in if you're like at your parents' house or a friend's house, and you have to make an adjustment, if you're not in a place where they're distinct right next to where you are, that's what like that. So now I have decided to use the underwear and I pre-bleed, and that felt so much better. I don't have as much cramping because I'm not putting stuff up and trying to get it out.
I might ruin your underwear depending on the company that you use. Don't tell me the company. Don't say it.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that I could just wear it or no underwear week, and then I'm
but
going that far.
To her point, I will have a lot of women who go from using traditional tampons to either using the cup or period underwear, and they stop getting so many clots.
Yeah.
That is a wildly common just feedback for me here, which tells you a lot. Those products come in contact with our most intimate and sensitive parts. So we should absolutely know what's in them. And unfortunately, in tampons and pads and liners and period underwear, some of them, there's been 2 big companies that have had lawsuits because forever chemicals are found in their period underwear.
We'll talk about that off camera. So.
Yeah.
If you are a non-toxic period underwear provider, please reach out to me.
Yes. There's one that I found actually, but a lot of them contain some of those chemicals that we talked about earlier, the dioxychlorine, genetically modified cotton.
Why does it need to be?
Why? Just use real cotton. Why are we doing that? Or undisclosed synthetic fragrance, where they're adding fragrance, to make it not stinky, but it's chemicals,
And then that's gonna make that's gonna make this smell worse because it's
the pH.
It's not that bad. Just regularly stay on top of it and you're fine.
Yes, exactly. VOCs, volatile organic compounds, are very common, and those PFAs. And again, I actually put this on my Instagram. I'm not going to say it here, but there are certain absorbent period brands, underwear brands, that have been sued because they've been found to have PFAs in their underwear, and they're 2 very, very, y'all know who I'm talking about, 2 very famous companies, big companies for period underwear. I don't remember the name of the one that I found. It's on my Instagram. I can go back and look. But the other important part are menstrual products, which I had no idea until I actually started doing research on my own this year. I had no idea that this was true. But menstrual products are actually regulated by the FDA as a class 2 medical device. Okay, think about that. But the FDA does not require manufacturers to list all ingredients. So you're telling me that you're a proper medical device, that you as a government agency is regulating. But us, the consumer, does not need to know what's in it as a medical device.
Well, this is also the same FDA that puts chemicals all over food and doesn't tell us what those are.
Oh, they're going to shut us down. And to boot,
There's the state.
to boot, the FDA's guidance documents on these devices, these medical devices, do not establish legally enforceable responsibility.
They also put a level 1 carcinogen.
Yes. So that means if you develop something from these medical devices that they're classified as, those companies have no legal responsibility to you whatsoever. And with women using just tampons, if women choose to use tampons using over 10,000 in their lifetime, that's pretty darn important. All those exposures add up, right?
Small things lead to big.
Yes. And especially with many of those inhibiting our reproductive tract or being reproductive toxins. It's just wild. It's ironic. It's very ironic that we're using those products for and directly on our reproductive system.
But you have epidermis everywhere, right?
Yes.
So if you can absorb it if you get a chemical on your skin, it's through your blood, it's through all of your system and through your bloodstream in, 2 minutes?
Yep.
So like if you got gasoline on your hand, you can test it in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
And you're using something for a long, long time.
Exactly. So what we want to do is we want to find unbleached, 100% organic cotton, fragrance-free, dye-free, chlorine-free products. You want a company who is fully transparent with their ingredients. There's no reason to hide things.
Right.
Just be transparent about it. What do you use? What am I literally inserting into my vagina?
Right.
Right.
There are companies that put titanium dioxide in their tampons, and titanium dioxide is brightener.
And it was banned, I want to say about a year ago, titanium dioxide was actually banned in the EU to be utilized in personal care products because of its dangers. And I found it, I wanted to look and I want to leave you guys hanging, but the period underwear that is awesome is Bambody. I might be saying that wrong, but it's Bambody. I did a ton of research because I actually do love period underwear also. I switched them and I started to see those studies on other companies and I was like, oh no. And so I researched them extensively. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. It's just a recommendation. Lola and Honey Pot are also awesome companies for tampons, for pads, whatever.
I did use Lola in the past. So when I was using tampons, they come in that brown.
Yes. Yep. Cora is another good one. VIV is another good one. Nature Care. I have some other ones listed on my Instagram, but there are really good options out there. So I don't want to provide you guys with like this fear of all these feminine products are going to kill you. But there are so many, just know what to look for. And there's so many good companies out there.
Just use what you got and then get it better.
Exactly. So I think we're done here.
Is this all we're talking about?
I think we're done here. Yeah. We have some awesome guests coming up that I try to keep these last 2 episodes just to what I personally wanted to talk about because there's so much with these upcoming experts that we'll dive into things, just in much greater detail, that I wanted to save those parts of the conversation for those experts to come on in and give me their perspective. And so we're going to feed off of them and have really, really cool in-depth conversations around women's health.
If you have questions, go to our website at discovery.com. Podcast question. Feedback. Let us know what you're loving. Let us know what you want to learn more about.
We just like to talk, so give us stuff to talk.
We hope that you feel like you're joining us on the couch. So I always tell people that I just get to sit down with, if my doctor was my best friend, which she is, what conversation do I get to have with her? She's got all that medical knowledge. Yeah, that's what we're all back.
And sorry about my stainless steel straw this entire episode. It'll be okay. You guys will be okay.
Welcome to the house.
Until next time, y'all. Let's discover together.
The content provided in this podcast provides general information and discussions on various topics related to health, wellness, and medical advancements. However, it is essential to understand that the content provided in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The hosts, guests, and contributors are individuals sharing their personal experiences, opinions, and knowledge in their respective fields. While they strive to provide accurate, up-to-date information, medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and the information presented in this podcast may not always reflect the most current research and medical guidelines. It is crucial to consult with a qualified healthcare professional or medical expert for specific medical concerns. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking medical treatment based on the information presented in this podcast. The Discovery Doc podcast encourages listeners to use their own judgment and discretion while implementing any suggestions, recommendations, or lifestyle changes discussed in this episode. Each individual's medical situation is unique and may work for one, may not be suitable or safe for another. The podcast hosts, guests, and contributors are not liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, or incidental damages or harm that may arise from listening or acting upon the information provided in this podcast. Listeners are responsible for their own health decisions and should exercise caution and seek professional guidance when necessary. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you have read, understood, and agreed to this medical disclaimer. If you have any questions or concerns about this medical disclaimer, please consult a qualified healthcare professional.